Extraction Cups round of 32. We are into our final match, which is definitely a little bit delayed than usual, but it's at the end of the Monday, and who cares? It's another winner's bracket match, and the last one we have that FFR D9 team seed 7 up against the Sound of Leyo seed 26. We have a match between some veteran UK players and also some upcoming players coming from other countries, being from the United States and also Venezuela, from the likes between Soundy and Yellow, aka Yuyuko Fangirl. So this is going to be a bit of an interesting match, especially when it comes to the Rice maps. I'm your host, Epic Man 2, and I'm going to be joined alongside Znow this time around. What's rocking?
Hello, hello. It's going quite well. A bit of a quiet Monday, which, I mean, it is to be expected in tourney settings. I mean, it's surprising that we have a match this late on, but, you know, sometimes scheduling can be a bit difficult. But thankfully, they did not have to result in a win by default.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much the part that matters most, because at least we have some more content for us to feast our eyes upon. That's the most important part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. I think... Alright. Yeah, it looks like all players are pretty much in. So, at this point, we're pretty much going to see our roles being taken upon either side for the time being. I would assume that if it does come down to the points, it's going to definitely come down to whoever protects which first, because I think for the Sound of Leyo, it's definitely going to be really competitive over on the Rice category if we assume we're going to be seeing the likes of Yellow and Zubin duking it out. So we have a 10 against 70. So that's going to be a pretty objective win for FFR D9 team when it comes to these roles, and I'd assume they want to protect first.
I'm not really too sure what I'd expect from like a protect in this case. I guess maybe like one of the Ellens, I would think maybe, but at the same time, Soundy's really good when it comes to Ellen as well. I would probably say maybe one of those players that a lot of people might sleep on, but you'll kind of see its performance throughout this match, I believe.
Absolutely, especially throughout the round of 32 bracket so far, we've definitely seen a plethora of these underdogs that have been definitely taking the top seeds by surprise in this round alone, especially throughout Saturday and Sunday from earlier on. We saw a lot of 5-3s going into the top teams that definitely had a bit of threat going into some of these maps, especially with how it's a little different as opposed to most early game rounds in other tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking maybe we might see like, if we're gonna see any protects on the Rice, I feel like maybe we'll see something like on like the more harder side, or even on like the more technical aspect, since I know both teams can be really strong when it comes to just that pure accuracy. I mean, I think a lot of people are just familiar with how Zubin and Nusen can kind of roll through these like more like early to mid game picks easily.
Absolutely. I mean, they've pretty much made an entire reputation around those, especially in the Mania World Cups, for example, where even for a few years, they've just consistently just butting out a variety of these early game maps we usually have. Like in a caliber under this, obviously, but still to a degree that pretty much everyone fears the name of them when they enter the woods, essentially. So I would imagine that the Sound of Leyo would want to at least maybe delve into the more technical picks, maybe either something like Rise 5 or Rise 6 to go against them, because I feel like in their case, Rise 2 and Rise 3 would definitely be a little more risky, especially if it does come down to raw accuracy battles alone.
Yeah, and I also know Zubin's just an extremely consistent player, probably like one of the most like consistent players like in tournament settings. So that's gonna also be something to be a bit scary of. But I think given that like we're still like a bit of an early round, that consistency is gonna matter too much, especially for something like Yellow, who's just really physical in general.
Indeed, yeah. From the looks of it, FFR D9 team is going to be choosing to ban first. So we will have the protects coming out from the Sound of Leyo first to see what they can go into. I definitely feel like they probably would want to bank on some other Rice picks, because the Ellens might definitely be a bit of a bloodshed as opposed to but contrary to what I was analyzing earlier, it does look like Rice 2 could be protected. So that's Unhappy Refrain being open for grabs as we are awaiting the next protect.
That's such an interesting protect. that could be interesting to know is I know Zubin tends to finger switch on like a lot of like faster patterns or like trickier patterns within like a singular column. And I feel like Unhappy Refrain, maybe it's not fast enough to warrant that finger switch, but it could be like a possible technique Zubin uses to kind of get more comfortable on a pick like that one.
Absolutely. I definitely think it can make sense if it is to be possible within the grounds of Rise 2 because it's very heavy when it comes to the anchor control and the trills that you really need to try and dial into. LN1 is going to be protected from the side of FFR Denying team. Very straightforward protect and a good decision at that, while Rise 5 will be banned as well. So definitely looking into their opposing team, considering that it's going to be really dense to even fight some of these players when it comes to these Rice maps. And LN3 will get the ban hammer as well. So honestly, that's going to help us so that we don't get another muted bond on the Switch channel. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I mean, if you see LN1 being protected, LN3 is probably like the next best since with something like LN2, maybe you could get away with getting the point a little bit easier just because LN3 is so much like more frame control heavy. And then you also have like some of those shields that kind of build up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very progressive map at that, and a very consistency demanding one at that as well. So I think this first pick is definitely going to matter so much for FFR Denying team because I would imagine they probably wouldn't want to stray into the Rise category immediately. So I think, especially going against the likes of Sound of Leyo, we could potentially see maybe a bit of a middle ground pick, but they're going to be going LN2 to start things off. So that's going to be Perseverance, one of our customs for this round, being thrown out into the limelight.
So that's an interesting pick. I wouldn't expect LN2 to be chosen immediately, but I guess like when you don't have that many LN options, what else can you really choose without like going into the hybrids right away?
Absolutely. I mean, LN2 is definitely a really strong pick from FFR Denying team still because this is essentially the more... This is the closest equivalent to that of Algorithm. Albeit it's a lot less dump oriented, but more like raw. Considering that it's about a minute longer, give or take, but it packs a punch because of how thick these density patterns are and just how wildcardy it is. So it kind of takes what we've seen of LN1 and LN3 and puts it all together in one map. So it's like it features a lot of these faster patterning, but it's also really hard to be able to remain consistent on, as we're going to be seeing Nusen and Yellow actually playing on this map. This is a bit of an interesting decision.
That is interesting. I wouldn't expect Yellow to come in right away. Oh, okay. I was gonna say unless maybe they're gonna like wait a second to switch, but no, immediately going with Yellow is just interesting. But I guess with like density picks, I mean, I think most people are kind of just familiar with the fact that as we kind of get through like more tournaments, Rice players are getting a little bit more comfortable with density picks, where they're starting to be able to score pretty highly on that. So it might be one of those cases where Yellow is pretty comfortable within something like this. I know they're not a pure Rice player, but it's still surprising to see, especially given that like Soundy is on their team.
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting choice considering that I think this could be a strategy to play around that of the cycle when it comes to having to switch around your teams if need be. So Yellow playing this map in favor of Soundy is definitely a bit of an interesting decision. And if it does come down to if they will have to play any other maps afterwards, like maybe the hybrids, if anything, they definitely have some open range that they can really start sharpshooting for if it does come down to this pick working in their favor. But so far, past the first quarter, we have no information to actually garner from either side. It's still stuck in the middle, a small bias in the favor of Newson until that miss from Yellow comes out.
That's such an unfortunate miss. I mean, Yellow was like slowly dropping their accuracy, but they were matching Newson for quite a bit. So it's definitely not like a one-sided game at all, but I guess given that miss, it's slowly becoming one. But who knows, maybe we could see a miss from Newson. These patterns are very like hand heavy and can be quite finger controlling, like I said.
As you say that.
Yep.
Damn. Okay, so it's 1-0. They are both eye for an eye when it comes to these drops here, and this is already going to bring things back into the middle. Definitely contrarian to what Newson would have been hoping for on a map like this, where he really needs to try and get an early point, because especially here, you're basically faced against someone that can definitely shake up the battlefield if neither side is too careful.
Yeah, I mean, especially given that like this is a bit of a longer pick, it's possible to still see a mess up between either of these players. I mean, I would assume Yellow's maybe a little bit more consistent, just given Newsom's performance as like the later rounds kind of go on. Despite this still being a bit on the earlier side, I mean, it's a Protection Cup. We all know that difficulty spiking pretty high.
Yeah, especially this early on. This is exactly why we've been seeing a lot of performances being a lot more competitive than what we usually suspect from the early game rounds, as it's still 2,000 points in favor of Newsom. There's some jobs coming out from Yellow, not enough to bring it to a miss just yet, as we are pushing 3,000, but this is probably the most difficult part of the map just because of how long it goes. You have that one break, but this goes on for the entirety of the final quarter. But unfortunately, that is all said and done. The final jump throw comes out, and that's going to be it. No FCs on the board, but despite it all, it's a 990k from Newson to really serve that first point and a break point of that.
That must be like really frustrating on the side of Yellow, just knowing that like he could have won that pick if it wasn't for that slider break. It seems, well, not even a miss, just a slider break.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, especially with the stark difference in the misses that we actually have here. Is just down to the ratio alone, because it's going to be really hard to be able to ratio these maps if you are like against the likes of Newson, for example. But that will essentially conclude this first pick. We have our next pick coming from the Sound of Leyo. What do you think they can go for on the boards now?
Honestly, it's very heavily dependent. I feel like if they want to like try take advantage of Newsom being on the weaker side, they could maybe go for something like Rice 6. But obviously, they can switch out their player and go to Zubin, who can probably FC this quite easily, even with good accuracy.
Yeah, indeed. It's just really about considering the options that you have right in front of your eyes, because I think for the Sound of Leyo, the Rice is definitely going to be arguably a lot more competitive than these LNs here, for lack of a better descriptor. We
Yeah.
could definitely see a lot of these hybrids being thrown out as well, but I would assume they're definitely going to be more middle ground picks, especially for Hybrid Free, for example. I could probably see Sound of Leyo picking into that if they just want a bit of a buffer pick, because that's basically the most Rice bias hybrid.
Yeah, definitely possible. I mean, given the fact that like if we see a potential like kind of Rice versus Allen battle, I would probably assume they'll leave the hybrids for FFRD9 team to kind of take away, and maybe they could get a break point from there, saving them from having to pick it. But it's kind of dependent, like you said, on like how they feel. But also, like you mentioned earlier, the cycle where all these players have a limited opportunity to play it.
Indeed, it's definitely going to matter very, very much in the grand scheme of things, especially for these rounds, but looks like we're going to be seeing Hybrid 2 instead, so not immediately going to go for the Rice category, going to save that for a little later and utilize that of Banbird Summer, the more conventional hybrid out of the other two that are right next to it.
I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, it's an interesting pick, but I just don't know if this might work out how they expect it to. The only thing I could think of is maybe they're trying to exhaust Newson's like plays, given that like they have the advantage when it comes to like the LN hybrid. So maybe they're trying to bait them into picking another LN hybrid next, and then pick one again to take advantage of Zubin's slight weakness in the accuracy for LN's hybrids.
Absolutely. That could definitely serve as a bit of a solid strategy if I was to peek into the mind of that of Yellow and Soundy here. It's just really depending on the execution here, because especially for Newson's case, he is very much a veteran when it comes to a lot of these maps, and especially for the hybrids. Okay, it's Zubin playing this. Is it?
Seems so.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
I mean, I could see it working out. I know Zubin's is pretty decent when it comes to the hybrids in comparison to the Allen, so it's definitely not like a bad choice. But I just don't know how both these players will deal. But I guess then again, something like this is like more of like a consistency hybrid out of like everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for the fact that both of these teams here that we have are practically interchangeable. They basically feel comfortable enough to have it so that either player that is more specialized in one field can basically just play in the other one, and they won't really have to fear that of the cycle rules that we have on the board. As especially for Zubin, I would assume that he's probably going to have to play through this because he can be really consistent when it comes to a lot of these dense patterns, especially in terms of accuracy with the amount of core jacks that we have thrown out here. They have the advantage by a pretty good amount based on Sound these drops and that miss from earlier. That's going to be pretty crucial.
Yeah, it does seem like as we kind of go through these like shields, Soundy's starting to lower the accuracy quite a bit. So is Zubin, but I think Soundy's is maybe a little bit more detrimental, especially like you said, that miss coming in, which is going to reset that kind of score multiplier.
Yeah, exactly, and that's gonna definitely hurt if you're looking to try and at least overtake that of some of our best United Kingdom players on a map like this, where it's just very demanding in terms of consistency, and it's also the shortest hybrid that we have, at least between the others. So making that balance in the pool, it's also one of the few maps that people have gone into fairly competitively. But the issue is that a lot of people kind of need to take into account that these patterns can be really hard to act, and you can easily trip up on a lot of them if you aren't too careful with the amount of shields that you really need to articulate here.
Yeah, and as it's like you said, I mean, we see both sides of that coin. Newson's side just being kind of not being able to hold on to the accuracy as strongly as they were before, and then Soundy take the other side of not being able to play as consistently as Zubin, which maybe without that miss, Soundy would have that lead.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really arbitrary considering the fact that this is a short map after all. So if it does come down to maybe 2 misses of something, then Soundy could definitely take this back because we see some drops coming out from Zubin, but unfortunately not looking to be critical enough to swing it back over, and the map's basically done. That miss from Soundy is just going to put the nail in the coffin as it's a 992k just about for FFR9 team. A break point again to bring things 2-0 in their favor.
That's so unfortunate, especially given that Soundy was starting to just climb back that accuracy. It wouldn't have done anything just because of the misses, but like, that's still unfortunate. I mean, both these points seeming to be lost just because of a consistency issue that we're starting to see.
Indeed. This is going to open for a pretty dangerous scenario for the Sound of Leyo, because I'd assume for FFR the 9 team, they probably feel safe enough to pick into something like LN1 this early. Especially since, because I'm assuming FFR the 9 team would want to end the match as soon as possible, try and aim for a sweep if they can, where due, because if it comes to the later stages of the map, they're going to have to be forced to play into some of the Rice maps, and that's going to open for a lot more dangerous scenarios between the likes of Zubin and Newson, because they're both really good at it, but so is Yellow. That could be the hand that takes them down, but we see LN1 to try and continue their slew of points that they've been accumulating so far.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. We're like about halfway through the match so far in terms of like winning. So it's kind of one of those picks that you've already exhausted maybe some of the picks that you're like a little bit unsure of. So go for something that you're quite comfortable with. And especially given that there's still 2 hybrids left. Sound of Leyo's gonna have to be able to take a break point on one of them if they want to be able to kind of bring these closer matchups within the Rice department.
Absolutely. That's probably going to be the one point where they can very easily be exploited. So that's going to be something that they're going to have to watch for following this map. If, you know, depending on how it turns out, it's either this goes 3-0 or the Sound of Leyo is able to take a break point into their name, because it's basically a necessity for them to even take one of those either way. And at a point of the match, it's definitely going to be really important to be able to take them early on as well, so that you can ensure that you have a bit of a safety cushion going into the early stages, so you don't need to feel the pressure of having to win so many points in a row, doing a reverse sweep at that, going into the later stages of the map where you're probably going to have to be forced to play into the Rice maps.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that we could see a breakpoint on this pick, just given that we did see Newson drop on LN2, and this one does have like some of those kind of like tricky like coordinating patterns. I mean, it is coordination pick, but you still have like more like awkward patterns that you're usually not too familiar with.
Indeed, yeah. Arguably the least physical out of all the other LNs. This is going to be a bit of a switch up from what we have seen on LN2, albeit It's still it's still an early advantage for Newson, especially with Soundy not looking the most comfortable with a lot of these patterns and a lot of these staggered releases that we have here. This song is fairly fast, especially if you are a little acquainted with the likes of Danny PX's Ellen maps. You can know they tend to be very articulative when it comes to the direction that the LNs go, and be it from the start or the endings themselves. So that's basically what Newson is actually capitalizing off of at the moment, and so far it seems like he's looking to try and take this one by a pretty fair margin, but we're only halfway through the map.
Yeah, Soundy's score is interesting because you wouldn't really expect Soundy to be struggling too much on something like this, given how well they could play like certain Ellen picks. I mean, they've beaten some my scores in some of the Ellen's apartment. So I'm wondering what's kind of happening. Maybe it's like we said earlier, some of these like more awkward patterns that you might not be used to, kind of catching up to Soundy, where it might not be one of those like skill sets that they play too often.
Absolutely, especially with this map, it still carries on the trend of being very release heavy. That's something that Soundy is going to have to at least remain consistent of, because so far it's still FC pace for both players. It's just really down to Newson to maybe take a few drops or so to be able to actually bring it into the favor of Soundy, especially going into this next section where it's a lot harder to actually coordinate because of how the coordination patterns are just stuck to only 3 columns. But so far so good. Newson is still in the driver's seat with those patterns intact, and Soundy is just gonna like still put some detriment in their score for a lot of these patterns, not looking the most comfortable on them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and even despite that, we still have like a lot of these like really tricky patterns that require so much control. So it's definitely not over completely yet, but like we're starting to get to that point where things are starting to slowly come down, and I think that might be it for Newson.
Indeed. Unfortunately, that's going to conclude it for this pick. Not going to be recoverable, unfortunately, for the Lexus Soundy, as that's a 997k coming from Newson. That is such a disrespectful score. Oh my god. This is almost 500 perfects of a difference on this map alone. Jesus.
Yeah, that is an insane score. It's so unfortunate for Soundy. I mean, there wasn't even much that he could do. Like they finally got their kind of consistency back, but it's kind of in vain.
Exactly. That's the issue with a map like this, where if you get gapped so hard, you pretty much have given up your card. But at the same time, that all the LN picks are gone from this round. So if FFR the 9 team really wants to try and continue any more wins, they can definitely try and fight it out on the hybrid category, albeit it's going to be a little more difficult there because there's some rice intact within both picks alone. Even if Switch is like, I guess, the closest you could go in the hybrid category towards stuff like Perseverance or Algorithm, for example, this probably can swing in the other's favor if not too careful enough. Sound of Leyo, I think, has to go for rice here if they want to at least try and prove competence on some pick on the board just while they can.
Yeah, I mean, given that it's their pick, I'm not too sure what I would kind of advise them to do. I mean, we already saw how the hybrids and LNs have been kind of going so far, so I would assume they're going to kind of switch out their strategy. Oh, okay, I was going to say they might even go for the protect.
Good. Honestly, this is the best time they could have thrown out their protect as well, because especially at a time like this, they're gonna really need to try and enforce some of these picks that they have, because they have almost the entire Rise category open, all but one, and it's a map that's basically one of the more riskier ones, aka side by side. Unhappy Refrain, however, still risky, albeit it's very much a consistency check, so I wouldn't be particularly surprised if we were to see either Newson or Zubin basically interchangeable roster, but we're going to be seeing Yellow come back into the fray.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they're slowly kind of catching up into like that no player can play more than 3 times, so what better time to kind of reset that than doing it on your own pick, especially given that they could easily go for a pick that Yellow might not be too comfortable with.
Indeed. Definitely going to be one of the most important picks for the likes of Sound of Leyo as well, because yes, this is their protect, and if this one does go well, they still have the luxury of hyperventilation as well, unless that is to be shadow banned, depending on if they aren't the most confident on that one either. But this one definitely needs to be one of their strongest picks, because if it does not come down to that and FFR 19 gets a match point just jumping off of this, then this is not going to be the best situation for the Sound of Leyo, honestly.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this one goes. I guess we'll see Newson still playing in, which might be a bit interesting. I mean, they're slowly kind of creeping up into that cycle, but like we mentioned within this pick, we already see a reset of that cycle from Yellow, so I would assume we probably see that within the next pick.
Hopefully, yeah. Only time will tell as the good luck have funds have been sent out. The intro notes come raining down, very small notes of a difference. Only in the middle for the time being. We get the intro coming in, but so far we have one main pattern to look out for. Everyone knows what it is. It's the trill. Let's see how they do on it. No one can miss here. If it does come down to a miss, it's basically done for one side.
Yeah, it seems like both players are quite comfortable with it, especially as they're starting to slowly tie as well. So it looks like we won't be seeing an issue of any of them being uncomfortable. And I would assume that both of them practice it quite a bit, especially just given from my experience. It's one of those patterns where you can't go into it on a sight read.
Yeah, indeed. It's definitely one of the hardest picks to sight read, just because, especially when you're least expecting the trill, is the one thing that throws off a lot of players on it, and especially when it reappears throughout the map like a bit of a motif that this map incorporates. It's basically a test to at least 5 of the main components that you're gonna need to incorporate within a map like this, and just ensure that you have intact. But so far, so from the looks of it, Newson and Yellow are both very confident going into this one. No major act drops as we see so far, and they're basically at the exact same accuracy. Oh yeah, no.
I think Yellow has like a very, very slight advantage, but like I said, it's so slight. Like, you see the score, it's like basically switching back and forth, and we even see it like around 50 at one point.
Exactly. The score difference is so slight that it may as well not even be considered an advantage at this point. They're both just playing out of their minds right out the bat. We just see the occasional perfects being thrown out here and there, being bled through a lot of these dense jump streams, but the first course is done, and so far it's still stuck in the middle. We have no idea who has the advantage on this as we go into the next verse, and there's barely any difficulty until at least 30 seconds after.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of given how the first trill pattern went, I think Yellow might be able to get a little bit of a big advantage. 14!
14. That's like, dude, there's literally no score advantage on this. We just saw the 14 right there. It's like, they're both just playing each other. It's like one side is literally just playing time trials and just facing their ghost. It's like how you do it in Mario Kart Wii, except you need to literally exploit the track to the most of your ability, and as it looks like, there is actually a bit of a small favor in the side of Newsom now, that it seems like there was a little too much perfect, but now that's basically gone. Watch the jump trill and the quad. Focus.
I actually think it might have been like those elements that tripped up Yellow a little bit.
Exactly. Definitely one of the bigger choke points within this map, I should say.
Oh, that might be really unfortunate, especially just given like how small this lead was.
Indeed. And there's not even much time left in the map either, but even despite that one element, if there was a fumble, we still see the score just going back into the middle. I'm actually genuinely scared. There's literally only 5 seconds of the difficulty. If anything happens, there's no way.
Oh, Newson's gonna barely
no,
get it.
No!
Oh.
84! It was a difference of 6 perfects.
How do you both 999? Like, imagine you get a 999 and you see you lose. What do you do?
Oh no, bro. How? What? Bro, Yellow's gonna be left with some insane amount of salt in their mouth. This is just disgusting. Oh no.
How do you 999 and still lose? That's just unfair.
we've seen this happen in various other matches earlier on as well, and Newson at the brink of a match point is gonna go for Rice 1. Look to try and put that salt into the wounds of Yellow potentially, but there is still a chance, as I like to say, that perhaps maybe this can be taken back. It was only 81 points that they lost by after all. So clearly, nowhere near objective, nowhere near that very definition of the word at all, as Zubin is going to be playing this one probably.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different player. So who's to say that things will go exactly the way that they think? And like we saw in the last one, Yellow is like really close to a Nuisance accuracy. So I would assume it's still gonna be quite close, especially just given that Zubin and Nuisance just destroy these like earlier rounds easily.
Absolutely, and especially for the likes of Sound of Leyo here, I think they're going to have to be really careful for the next few picks if it does come down to having to win at least maybe a few of them, because especially here, this is Yellow's second map, so if it's going to really come down to if they can at least try and afford a bit of a reset for the map following this one if it goes successful for them. I imagine this one is also going to be as brutally competitive as Rise 2 was, because this map is the least physical out of everything else. Like, yes, this does include a lot of these really dense dump stream patterns that have, you know, a lot of bursts at 1-6. Basically, imagine you're playing 255 streams with the occasional jumps here and there between each beat. That's going to be the main difficulty of this map, as there's basically no difference going into the intro and just basically partway through the first quarter.
Yeah, like you said, it's not going to be like as difficult as the last one, just going to be more speedier. So we could potentially see things switch up a little bit maybe. I know Yellow tends to do really good when it comes to like these like really dense patterns. So it could be a bit of a switch up for them and maybe a bit of a bad one, but we'll kind of have to wait and see, as this lead's basically flickering like before.
Oh god, here we go again. The story repeats itself, as it's the first course and there's no advantages whatsoever. We've seen really close sweeps happen throughout this round, and it's always been the most saltiest moments of this tournament alone. So if it does come down to having another one to end this weekend off, then that's going to be really unfortunate for Yellow, because they are literally showing that they are able to match that of both Zubin and News when it comes to the accuracy and consistency alone. That of Raw veterans, and this guy, mind you, is still upcoming. We've only really started witnessing their prowess in the third impact, for example.
Yeah, that's something scary to think about. Like, there's so many of these players that are just up and coming, but as we're getting through this break, it looks like he has the slight advantage. Yeah. Just gotta wait for that second chorus.
Oh, this is like the scary. I swear the anxiety of either player must be so massive at this point. If they were to like look at the score, they can't, because there's literally no break in the map whatsoever.
Yeah.
But now there's at least a small bias in the favor of Yellow. But there's only really one core of the map left to actually discern whether this can actually go on.
Yeah, no, the nerves have to be especially high for Yellow, just given that they're down 4 points and it's
You're kidding!
No!
What?
They
just
my God. Had it.
No! Dude! As soon as they were on a thread, it just clips! Oh no! Oh my God!
That's so unfortunate. I don't really think there's any comeback for this.
It's not even a floor at this point. It literally is a 998k for the favor of F4 the 9 team, making it a 5-0 sweep. Had it not been for the one great and the one miss, they could have taken it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
This is what the game is telling me now, that somehow everyone is actually this good at C26 against a 7th seeded player, and they're still losing because of the occasional misjudgments and a difference of 15 perfects.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, but thankfully, like you said, it's a winner's bracket, so they're not out yet.
Absolutely. A lot of people need to really start seeing the winner's bracket as a saint for these kinds of matches, because Holy moly, have we seen a lot of disrespectful points here and there. We've seen it coming from even the likes of Losbury Hiroba and like many other teams out there just being left with some massive taste of salt in their mouths after some of the most intense, nerve-wracking picks we've seen in a round of 32 match against literal war veterans. These people literally went into bombings and somehow they're literally being matched with C26 players. The seedings are just irrelevant now.
Yeah.
Like, bro. And they're up against Leon next. Oh my days. This has to be their first match. There's no way that Leon's gonna get away with a third win by default. There's just no way that is happening. No way in Jose.
Yeah, but they will be going against My Pie and Wonder 903 next week for their first match of conditionals.
Indeed. So thankfully, the Sound of Leyo not out of the woods just yet. I'd imagine that they're gonna have a really, really strong losers bracket run, especially with the physicality of these Rice picks and just the sheer accuracy and consistency of that of Yellow. They're gonna really shine bright in that losers bracket over there. As that will do it for our entire round of 16 weekend. So all we have left is now and our entire round of 32. So all we have is the round of 16 showcase. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that should be in about an hour.
Yes. Gonna be... Yeah, it's basically gonna be in like an hour to an hour and a half from now. It's slightly variable depending on like, you know, the availability of so many people to take cover for this one, but hopefully should be soon. Yeah. Definitely want to keep it before Tuesday, if anything, because I still want to get it within a reasonable amount of time so that everyone can practice this and basically prepare themselves, prepare their underwear for the next weekend. It's crazy. It's gonna be insane. I'm scared.
Yeah, but I guess we could end it off here unless you have anything else to say.
Chicken burger.
So we'll be seeing you in about an hour. Goodbye. Thank you, Pastor Raj, for the stream, of course.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining the stream, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Take care.